Hey, Helen.
Hey, not sure how I managed to get in the meeting first.
I think Ruby set it up in a way that it would allow people to join. And I had started it earlier and then I was really early. So I was like, all right. We jump back out for a few minutes and pull stuff together.
That's cool.
Sally Wilson had requested to present on medical respite, the September meeting.
Are you a Duke fan by chance?
Who, me?
Yeah.
Nah. I'm not really a Duke or a UNC fan. It's just sort of I'm from Virginia, so I don't have an allegiance to any one of the two schools.
I have been I was the county commissioner, actually came from my department head, but I'm going to be one of probably several people recognized at the Duke football game for community service to the community, and I have the opportunity to get complimentary tickets to the Duke NC A&T game, which I'm sure they're probably going to be very full that day.
I'm sure they will be.
I'm sure they won't be. I don't think Duke football team is not the greatest in the world, and Duke and A&T is probably not like the highest draw.
Probably not. When is the game?
It's the 17th at 6 p.m.
That'd be fun.
So I got to tell them today how many tickets I need to get. I get this unlimited number of complimentary tickets.
An unlimited number.
Unlimited. They're not expecting the stadium to be full. Either that or they don't know how many people I know.
Well, here's what we do. Take them out and give them to everybody who's unsheltered and say, here's a fun event.
That would be awesome.
Homeless night at the Duke football game.
With free food, because they're providing food too.
There you go. That would probably be the last time Duke ever gives unlimited.
But it would underline the importance of the work that we're doing in the community.
It goes perfectly with the community service theme. I like it. Here we brought 100 of our closest friends who are experiencing homelessness in Durham.
Oh, I mean, that would be awesome, actually.
And we've got the paramedics here in case any of them are overdosing because of their opioid addictions and alcohol addictions. And you got security. So hopefully if any of them get completely inappropriate, we can address those issues as well. Other than that, everybody have a great time.
Right, yeah.
It's actually not a bad idea. That'd be kind of might be a fun thing to do.
The wheels are turning. I can see it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got to tell them today how many tickets I need. So. I just got that pop up on my computer to remind me. Because I forget things if I don't have those reminders. Hi, Jonathan.
Hi, Helen. It's great to see you all.
You too.
Lloyd's trying to join, but I think he's in the wrong place.
I guess to have quorum, we have to have at least 3 anyway. So
50% plus 1, I think, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well,
I'm assuming Shay has the link.
Yeah.
knows about the meeting.
There's Lloyd showing up. Lloyd showing up as me because I think I sent him my link. That's to me. So Lloyd will be Colin. I'll be Ruby, and we'll just confuse everybody today.
Good morning.
Hey, Colin, how are you?
Good, thanks. How are you, community development?
I'm good. We're just going to confuse the executive committee today. I'm going to play the role of Ruby. You can play the role of Colin.
I'll take a moment to rename myself here.
That'll work. I think I did that once before with I think I sent my link to Angel once, and she joined and showed up as me. I was like, wait, why am I here?
Okay.
I've shown up so many different meetings after being in a Toastmasters meeting, and you always put your name and your role that you're doing it in the meeting. And I forget to rename myself. I finally found that little button when you rename yourself that you can check that box. You uncheck the box and it doesn't keep the name. I finally found that button after 2 years it took me.
I did a Zoom meeting with my sister, my brother, and my nieces and my nephews. And I think when I logged into it, I don't know, a while ago, I had changed my name to like coolest uncle ever. And it was over the weekend, so it wasn't a big deal. Well, I had a Monday morning meeting with, I think it was a lot of the justice involved folks to talk about how and what we could do for COVID housing with them. I logged in, just totally didn't even think about it. And then one of the guys just busted out laughing. He's like, coolest uncle ever. That's awesome. I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm going to change this name.
Yeah.
So yeah, change the name to whatever you want, but make sure to change it back. Well, Ruby is off today. Melissa is working a part of a day, but I think it's the afternoon part of the day because her grandmother passed away last Thursday, and she's power of attorney and trying to deal with all of the funeral stuff and has been tied up. So I think it's just Lloyd and I from our team. I don't know where Sharita is. Let me see if I can text her and see if she's joining.
Well, I don't think we have anything we have to vote on today.
I don't think so either. It's just the figuring out an agenda.
Yeah.
And Ruby said, I think Ruby said she sent the link to Shay. I do have one of our business things to talk about, and Helen and I talked about it briefly, but Jonathan and Lloyd want to get your thoughts on it. Russ Pierce from Housing for New Hope was recently appointed to the HSAC by the county. And I was talking to him yesterday, and he said that he would be willing to take, run for the secretary role if the executive committee or others felt that it wouldn't be inappropriate. Housing for New Hope does get a significant amount of funds through HSAC competitions. I'm not sure that, as long as you disclose your conflicts of interest and recuse yourself, I don't know that there's a reason that I can think of that would prohibit somebody from being secretary, but thought we should talk it out before we give him a final verdict on it.
What are your thoughts, Jonathan?
So yeah, I mean, I think the scoring is done, and and performance management. And yeah, I think he would be a wonderful addition to leadership. And I think he'd have to be very careful and avoid, participations in discussions that, have the possibility of, influencing funding selections. I mean, that's sort of the biggest, it's always the biggest thing. But I also, so I was telling Lloyd yesterday, I missed last Wednesday's HSAC meeting with an unexpected medical issue. So I understand we didn't end up having a secretary. So it sounds like we do, we do need somebody there.
Yes. That is correct. We had just Shay Kennard was voted in as vice chair, but we did not have anyone nominated for secretary.
Wow.
I would emphasize that the HSAC does need a secretary. I think it's inappropriate for the committee to simply rely on the staff to perform secretarial functions.
I don't disagree with that. I think that one of the things I was talking to Colin about this morning too, especially on the executive committee, we need the secretary to have the odd number for for voting purposes, because right now we only have 4 people and we could easily tie on anything, which means nothing would get done. Not that we have to vote on a lot. But having that odd person, but also I agree. Y'all got used to not doing the minutes anymore. I want to take it back. Right? I hear you.
Well, I will say, speaking of which, I should probably take some notes for today's meeting.
Actually, I'm doing that, Colin. I got you covered.
What's that?
I'm doing that.
Oh, are you? Thank you. I'm like, oh, wait, I should do that. Russ did say, he's like, it'll be bullet point minutes. And I'm like, that's fine. Like,
Yeah.
and he does have a lot of experience in the direct stuff, and I think would be an asset to the committee and a valuable voice on the leadership team, and trying to help push some of the more planning and more advocacy roles that we could be doing.
I think he would give us a perspective that I certainly can't provide. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question, Jonathan. You said avoiding discussions, obviously avoiding voting, definitely, but you also mentioned avoiding discussions. Is that, I realize that he could influence discussions, could be perceived to influence him in his favor, but I'm curious what your thoughts are about that.
I think I was actually taking that wording straight from the conflict of interest policy. I think the wording, if I'm remembering correctly, is that obviously you can't vote on something where you have a conflict of interest, but I think you are also supposed to avoid discussions where you also have a conflict of interest. But that's me drawing on my memory. I'll have to go back and take a look and see if that's correct.
Unfortunately, I couldn't pull up the form. It wouldn't come up on my computer, so I can't verify that.
So I'll go ahead, Lloyd.
No, I believe that Jonathan is correct. You shouldn't be participating in discussions because that where you have a conflict of interest, because you're attempting to sway opinion of others, and that's inappropriate.
I think also having Russ, in the kind of the leadership, I don't know what we want to call it now, where you kind of enter the leadership pipeline. Shay has a lot of energy and is excited to do things, but she also has a lot to learn. So I think it would be good to have, when she moves up in a year's time to chair, it'd be good to have Russ behind her as vice chair. Of course, that's, you know, dependent on an election then next year, but to have somebody, you know, already very, very knowledgeable right behind her, I think would be helpful.
How are you, Sharita?
I'm okay.
So we were just talking, Russ Pierce had indicated to me that he would be willing to run for secretary if the executive committee and city felt that there was a way to do so without ruffling feathers or creating problems and conflicts of interest. And that's what we're talking about now is, you know, he does have some inherent conflicts of interest. However, those conflicts of interest don't necessarily exclude you from serving in a leadership role. It just means that we as a team would have to make sure that, you know, he doesn't talk when he's not supposed to and doesn't vote when he's not supposed to. But, you know, and that's a question that we just are sort of wrestling with and talking through right now. And as of right now, nobody wants to be secretary. Nobody's expressed an interest in doing secretary. And as Helen pointed out, right now, our executive committee is a committee of 4. So if there is a tiebreaker, there is no way to break a tie without a secretary. Do you have any thoughts on that, Sharita? I wish we had somebody with lived experience too. But so far, nobody, to my knowledge, has even applied to the county's lived experience piece as of yet, and that's been sitting open for a while. I've reached out to Ebony Thomas, Colleen, well, obviously Shay, she wanted to do a vice chair. Chris Tones may be having to come off of HSAC and off of all the committees he's on due to his workload. So I've gone through everywhere I can go and shared with folks, but people are just like, I don't have time, can't make that commitment, I'm overloaded, da, 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 da. So we could leave the seat vacant, but there's no telling. I mean, you'd be looking at least a 2 or 3 month vacancy, and that's assuming somebody with lived experience would want to step into that secretary role, and assuming somebody's applied and they get through to us, you know, even from us to approved by the county is a good 1 to 2 month process.
I think
What's that?
the issue that we have is the issue that we've always had is a very small group of people that actually are the ones that do the work.
It's true.
The question now that right now is, what are your thoughts about Russ filling that role?
I don't think that I have a problem with it if that's who we have now. I don't know if other people may have a problem with it, but I also don't hear them stepping up to be secretary.
Right.
And, you know, we can put it up there. We have somebody willing to run. Let him explain how he's going to handle any potential conflicts of interest to the group. And if there's any floor nominations that would like to step up now, now's your chance, or forever hold your peace.
But then it still has to go to a vote, and if they say no, then
And that's the only way I think we can sort of dot our I's and cross our T's as best we can. And, you know, I'm pretty sure between Russ and all of us, we can make sure that we, you know, mitigate any of the conflicts of interest as best we can. I mean, I know that you're not supposed to speak on topics where you have an interest, but there are times where providers who are applying for funds are part of discussions on how we design score sheets. And they're part of discussions on, you know, well, this is what it means and this is why this doesn't work. So, you know, there may be some pieces where it's a factual piece that having that input is, it's not a, hey, this is the way we should do it. It's a, here's a fact that's important for the discussion and then pull out type thing. But, you know,
I think from that perspective, he could offer some very valuable insight that we could definitely use. So are we all okay then with moving forward with letting him, as Colin said, we'll present it at the next meeting, which is the 14th, right?
it's,
And let him explain how he plans to avoid the conflict of interest in that role, and then take it to a vote or get a motion so can take to a vote. We okay with that?
I think it's a great idea.
and then we can ask for any other, if there's any new floor nominations as well. Okay, that'll work. Other agenda issues, business issues. I think the only other item I had is getting our agenda for our September meeting put together. Unless Helen, Jonathan, Sharita, do you have, or Lloyd, do you have other topics you want to talk about today?
I don't.
I'll just let you all know, I mean, we're in the middle of scoring right now, so we're working hard to, you know, get a recommendation, well, be several recommendations, you know, for that meeting on the 14th.
Okay.
So we're hard at work.
In previous, I think executive committee meetings, or maybe that was policy and planning. Colin, you can correct me if it was policy and planning. It might, never mind, it might be policy and planning.
About
Never
the
mind.
unsheltered?
No, I was just talking about information as it relates to new properties coming online that we may not be aware of.
That's policy and planning.
Okay, yeah, I think it was policy and planning. Gotcha.
I mean, if we're considered, if we're looking at the agenda for these, for the HSAC meeting. So, okay, so obviously there's the 3 competitions that we currently have underway, both the state ESG, the supplemental NOFO, and the annual COC competition are going to need approval of funding recommendations from performance management. So there's 3 of them.
So COC funding recommendations,
Right.
and then COC, are we ready for the COC supplemental?
Yes. That's the easy one at this point because we only have one project to recommend.
And then state ESG.
Right. We also will need to determine, it's one thing this committee should discuss, I suppose, is how we're going to handle approvals of the collaborative application. I think both the collaborative application for the COC competition as well as for the special NOFO need to be approved by the COC board. And I'm trying to feverishly work on the COC collaborative application for the annual competition that's due September 30th. I don't know that I'm gonna have a complete draft ready by September 14th. The deadline for the special NOFO is October 20th, so both of those deadlines don't line up well with the meeting schedule for the HSAC.
Because we're at the October meeting is what, October 26th or October 19th?
Generally October 26th. It's generally the fourth Wednesday of the month. I mean, we do make exceptions for like Christmas where we move it
Yeah, so I think it's
to
the
Thanksgiving.
I think it's in
I
there.
mean, I think even
No.
putting it on October 19th is the day before the,
It's the 26th.
yeah.
So I guess the question for this committee would be, do we want to recommend moving the October meeting? Or would we want to take a recommendation either to have a special meeting or an email vote? Or do we want to make a recommendation or just allow some sort of discussion?
I think we might want to consider a special meeting.
What are the deadlines for these again?
September 30th is the deadline for the collaborative application for the annual competition. October 20th is the deadline for the supplemental special NOFO for unsheltered homelessness. We can get the funding recommendations approved at the September 14th meeting, but the collaborative applications, which are kind of our community-wide application, also need approval by the COC board, and don't think we're going to be ready with the annual competition on September 14th. We may have a pretty solid draft by then, but it's going to be tight. And then for the supplemental NOFO, that's not going to be ready until early October at the earliest.
So we would need to have, if we did a special meeting, we would need to have it by before before September 30th.
We might have to have two,
Yeah.
because there's a lot of stuff that has to go into all of these.
I mean, you could approve the so that the again, we only have one application for project funding for the supplemental NOFO, and I don't think that's going to be a problem at getting that approved on September 14th. We could approve the collaborative application for that competition at a special meeting on October 12th, which would be the second Wednesday, which would be consistent with the second Wednesday of September that we're having the meeting in September. Big question with these special meetings is how difficult it will be to get a quorum.
I won't be available on the 12th.
You will or won't be?
Will not.
Well, you do have a vice chair,
Yes.
which is a good thing.
That's one less vote. You're talking about having a quorum, that'd be a problem, but
Yeah.
But you could vote in abstention, right? I mean, you know the material that's going to be you would know the material that's going to be presented, so
Yeah.
you could still cast your vote.
if that's a possibility, I could. I don't know what the rules are about that.
I mean, if you did a special meeting and you could either attend the special meeting and vote or vote via email, Matt, it's a little bit of a logistics, jujitsu that we would have to do on our end to make sure that we count everything in the right ways. but I'm sure Ruby and or Melissa would be able to sort of help count and coordinate that. We could, Lloyd, while we don't necessarily have I'm thinking out loud here, so bear with me. While we don't have a completed application yet, we do have a lot of this is kind of roughed out. We might be able to sort of think through, is there a way for us to kind of present what type of stuff is going into these applications and talk through it at this meeting? And then allow, questions, feedback, whatever, regarding what we're planning to put in it, and then an email vote for the final version. And that might get us around the special meeting piece and allow people a chance to have a discussion about how and what and why we're thinking of answering these questions in this way.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly an option. I don't know. I mean, I don't know how many HSAC members actually read the collaborative application. It's a longer document, but it's an important document because it kind of does lay out to HUD what we are doing, generally what we have done or what we are doing. The supplemental NOFO is the big part of that is going to be what we plan to do if we are funded through this special NOFO to address unsheltered homelessness, which is an increasing concern as we have seen the numbers essentially double between 2020 and 2022 of unsheltered people in the community. So it's up to the committee as to how you want to handle those scheduling challenges.
You're suggesting, if I understand, Colin, that for the one that is due November, sorry, I keep saying November, September 30th, that we could talk about the points on the September 14th meeting and then do an email vote for that one.
I'm suggesting that we might be able to give kind of a high level overview of both of these NOFOs at the September meeting. While we don't have everything drafted and in written form yet for every single question, we could go through, not the entire application because these applications are, 40 pages long by the time you're done with them. We could pull out the things that are most pertinent to the HSAC. Here's the plan, here's the description, here's why we're doing this, here's how much we're applying for, here's where we're still looking for input. Any input you have that you want to consider into this, that's great. Here's where we are searching for the input, here's where we're looking for letters of commitment, and then sort of use that as our chance to share what the plans are that are going into this. Because at this point, while we may not have the exact wording down, I'd say, Lloyd, would you agree? We pretty much know what we're going to put in there. And we could probably talk about it at least at a high enough level to give everybody an idea of what's happening. And then we would do an email vote, obviously for the September 30th due date, before that September 30th deadline, and just do an email vote. We would send out the full document, and then we would send out a full document in October for the supplemental NOFO that's due towards the end of October for a vote on that.
Okay. So then we would not need to look at moving our October meeting up to the 18th instead of, or is it the 20th? I can't really know.
That would be, yes, that would be a workaround to ensure that we can brief people on brief the committee on what's going in, have an opportunity for feedback. we could send out what we currently have, knowing that it's not fully complete and there might be a lot of blanks in it, but folks can look at it if they're so inclined. And that might have some suggestions that we could incorporate into these things at the September meeting if we sort of carve out half hour, 45 minutes to go over it.
Jonathan, Sharita, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it gets tough to schedule these special meetings.
Mhm.
I think, yeah, if we could maybe spend our time on kind of providing, the information that we think members are going to need to vote on, make an educated vote. I think that probably would be our best use of time as a resource. And, I know certainly doing an email vote is, not the easiest thing. It may be the best thing in order to give people a little bit of time. I mean, we kind of run into this every year. We know that you guys get the NOFOs on very short, very short notice. And then we've got to, get together and score very quickly on very short notice. So I think I would be inclined maybe to think about what, kind of what's the baseline information that we need to give folks so that they can feel like they're making an educated vote, and maybe go from there.
I do expect to have a pretty completed draft of the collaborative application for the annual competition by September 14th. The draft for the special NOFO, less so. But we know what needs to go in it, and some of this, about a third of the stuff that's going into this supplement, the special collaborative application, is repetitive of things that are in the annual application.
I think we tend to get asked a lot of, well, maybe not a lot of questions, but as I can recall, the questions we tend to get asked about aren't necessarily, what we as the scoring committee and the performance management have recommended, but we also tend to get asked about kind of trends in recommendations, what's been recommended in the past, those kind of things. So I guess I would say, if we end up, in our presentation of the material, if we can kind of tie that into, here's where we're going as a COC, these recommendations are, we feel, the most in line with what we're trying to do and with how projects have scored. I do think, Lloyd and Sharita are right. I don't think most people read the materials. So if we can, anything we can do to kind of, again, kind of make a sort of a baseline area of knowledge so that people can feel like they're making an educated vote. I think that kind of tends to be a source of anxiety, even for folks who do read them, if they're not, if they haven't participated in a scoring panel, it's not necessarily going to kind of, be comprehensible. So,
I think that our biggest challenge, so this is like the most challenging time, and we usually end up in the same kind of dead space spot. And so what I've been trying to get myself to do more and more as I've been on this committee is trying to think about incrementally, like, different things we voted on the course before we get to it. Before we get to this place, so then I have an understanding of why The recommendations are the way they are, things like that. And I don't think that people, especially who don't do the work every day, they don't connect the dots. So I think when we get to this point where we're asking them to vote on something, they really are clueless. Like all the stuff from the past, 8 months, it's just kind of gone away. And we're here again, and it's like a deer in headlights. And folks don't know what to do. They don't always read. When they read, they don't always understand it. And they don't ask questions when they don't understand. At least the questions that need to be asked to make the decisions that we need to make.
I think doing it this way might actually be helpful because they'll get an overview prior to the vote. Then they'll get information about what they're voting about afterwards, and it will make more sense because you've already had the overview. Most of the time, everybody gets everything all at once. And like you said, Sharita, it's something that no one does every day. It's not direct, like someone like me. It takes me more than the 15-20 minute presentation for it to really make sense. I need to dig into it and think about it and ask questions. I don't know what questions to ask in that moment.
And so like, and I said all that to say, how do we connect the dots so that people see it when it's presented? Like, what do we do as a HSAC, as leadership, to help people kind of understand the journey? So that when we get to this place, they understand a little bit better. I don't know if we do a timeline of the different things that have happened in the 8 months of, where we voted on specific things and why, and then a little rationale by it, and then say, now we are here, and this is the recommendation based on that. If we could figure out how to do that, I think people would be better prepared, because I think that we end up voting, but nobody is really happy or clear about what they did.
So I think you bring up a really good point, Sharita. And Lloyd and I've talked about this, and the homeless team has talked about this for a while, is that, a lot of people see this NOFO application as a 8 to 12 week thing that happens once a year. Really, the NOFO is a year-round process. And what we should be doing, and we just haven't had capacity as a system to do this. And this is why, one of the arguments that we were able to make to city council to bring additional staff to the homeless team is that we would be able to really do the COC work the way it's supposed to be done, which is this NOFO essentially is here's what we did in the last year. It's kind of your annual report. And it's also kind of here's our plan for the next 12 months. So once we are able to staff up appropriately on the homeless team, we could include sort of a COC, for lack of a better term, NOFO update to the monthly HSAC meetings of, hey, this is where we're looking at evaluating projects. This is where we're going back and checking on partnerships that were talked about in the NOFO that was submitted in October. This is, and it kind of keeps it alive and keeps it on the burner, and it keeps us on track for making the changes and implementing the things that we say we're going to implement. So I think that's a really, really good point, Sharita. And this might be our best way of, on a go forward basis, to keep people educated about this. And while it's a small amount of money, it's not an insignificant amount of money in the overall system, but it does carry a disproportionate amount of weight and responsibility for the system.
Understanding the staffing challenges, we all have those. And I know yours are particularly challenging at times. how much, if anything, would you be able to do for the September meeting to provide some type of a context?
I think Lloyd chime in and correct me, but I think Lloyd's already said we'll have a pretty good rough draft of this, of the first NOFO ready to go. So we can get that out and we can probably do a quick walkthrough of the high level things that are most pertinent. 30% of what's in this NOFO is going to be repeated in the October one. So we could probably pull out, the big piece that we don't know in October and we're not going to have is the 15-page plan to address unsheltered homelessness. That's the big piece. But we could talk pretty easily on this is a plan that we're working on. We're getting input from these groups. We're trying to reach out to Duke and Lincoln and different, we're trying to get lived experience heard and walk through that. So that would be the thing that I would say folks would really want to read when we get that drafted, because the rest of the NOFO is going to be tied to that document. So you wouldn't necessarily have to go in and read all of the 40-page October supplemental NOFO. If you were going to read anything, you would want to read the 15, up to 15-page homeless plan document, and everything else is kind of going to be tied back to that. And Lloyd, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we could do between Lloyd and I, we could probably do a pretty brief overview, and it would save trying to coordinate a special meeting.
Yeah, and that's fine. I see Shabira's note. I mean, we do have a one pager that I think we're still working to get set out in terms of the funding for the three competitions that we're in the process of managing. It's important to understand that the funding recommendations are one piece. The collaborative applications are a related piece, but much of the collaborative applications do not directly address funding. They are more focused on kind of the community-wide, the collaborative efforts to address homelessness. And it really reports, as Colin has suggested, kind of reports to HUD what we've been doing in a collaborative way to address homelessness in a number of different areas, coordinated entry, racial equity, several questions about that. There's also questions about, how well we're working with different systems, what we're doing to help people increase income, access benefits, etc. How well we're incorporating people with lived experience. So it's a much more broad application that is one piece of the application, and that's really separate from the funding recommendations that we'll be making for the specific projects that are being recommended for funding by performance management. But I agree, we'll have a pretty good draft of the collaborative application for the annual competition by September 14th. And we can send it out ahead of time and review it in the meeting. I would recommend that we postpone Sally Wilson's presentation on medical respite to the October meeting, because I think a lot of September meeting on September 14th is going to really focus on the competitions.
I would agree with you, Lloyd. This was just sort of there as a placeholder, so I didn't forget
Sure.
that she had asked for it. And I think even if we had time for it, it would just confuse. People would be like, well, can't we get this in the NOFO? And we'd spend 45 minutes explaining why it may or may not fit, or how to make it fit, and muddy the waters.
I want to respond to Sharita's comment in the chat about the rubric. From the last HSAC meeting, we did prepare a one-pager. I think that got lost when Melissa's grandmother died, and it wasn't sent out to the COC and to the HSAC, but we'll work to get it sent out hopefully by the end of the day.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
we'll either get it sent out today or Tuesday.
Right.
When we get back from the holiday weekend.
So if I'm understanding everybody correctly, then we're okay with doing the presentations as you talked about on the 14th, and then doing an email vote before the 30th for the one no vote, and then before October 20th for the other no vote. Is that, do I understand that right, Jonathan and Sharita? We're okay with that?
Yep. I mean, that sounds good to me.
We got a pretty full meeting.
Yes, we do.
So let's structure this. I'm just going to try and. Where do we want to do? Secretary up at the top,
Yeah, let's go
that
ahead.
knocked out.
Mhm.
And then what we should probably do is do the overview of the NOFOs.
Okay.
I'm just going to call it big picture. Then we're going to need a motion to do an email vote for these. Then we will do, then let's do the funding recommendations since that flows naturally. Then we can do the approval of the written standards. So. Vote. Got a lot of votes.
When you say need motion, I'm assuming it's the motion needing to vote to approve or to do an email vote.
Yes.
Or do you-
Yeah, well, that's more of a note for me to remember that when Melissa's putting together the agenda, that vote needed. So I guess it'll be I guess I should just put vote needed.
So we would, just thinking about the logistics of doing that meeting, I would ask for a motion and a second to do an email vote. Is that right, what we're talking about? And then the email vote would come later.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, we're basically saying rather than pulling a special meeting together, the executive committee is recommending an email vote at a later date. Is there a motion to do so? Once these are ready to be sent, we'll send it out and have a 2-day voting window or something like that, or give people a chance to look at it. It's whatever the time frame is that people think they need.
What is the approval of the written standards? That's something that,
That is something that we're behind on. And part of our ESG COVID monitoring that HUD headquarters is doing. And HUD headquarters is starting this on September 19th. And our written standards are just kind of, a lot of these are just administrative cleanups to, instead of a 50-page document, getting rid of duplicative information that doesn't need to be in there multiple times. And it's a getting rid of the duplicative information, and we have gotten rid of things that are just no longer pertinent, that we no longer use the VI SPDAT. We use a different tool. We've updated, including information about how we're doing our ESG COVID funds, had to be put back, added to the written standards for where there's discrepancies. So it just sort of talks about how we do what we do, and it's better articulating the what we have been doing. So it's not proposing that we're doing anything different. It's just sort of, we had been doing things different, but we hadn't updated the written standards to reflect the way we had been moving. So we're just trying to do the administrative cleanup of that at this point.
We also need them approved for our state ESG application. They want to see our written standards every year.
So Sharita, this is going to be on the policy and planning agenda, and I'm planning to send it out to policy and planning.
What's gonna be on the policy and planning agenda?
The written standards.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm gonna, my goal is to get those sent out by no later than close of business Tuesday.
Oh, my goodness. I was looking for, I was looking for them the
Yeah.
other day.
Because we've got two, I think our policy and planning meeting is the 13th.
Mhm.
So I wanted to make sure folks had at least a week or close to a week to read them or skim them. And in the meeting, we can do a high level overview of what's in them and talk about any adjustments that need to be made.
policy planning's on the 12th, right? And Monday.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, sorry. Not looking at a calendar. I knew it was
Okay.
somewhere in the teens.
And I was looking at the wrong day.
Well, see, these are the kind of things that when the HSAC has to vote for something and they're given it at the last minute, and I agree, people don't read stuff, but would this be something that after the policy and planning meeting, we'd be able to send that out for people to see prior to the Wednesday meeting? Like
Yes,
the afternoon?
yes. It's going to come from, it's got to start. This is one of those documents that has to start in policy and planning.
Right.
And then they would make a motion. I mean, they would make the recommendation that HSAC approve it. And I haven't gone back to double check to, I think we may be taking an overly conservative approach that HSAC has to adopt these. Policy and planning may actually have the permission to adopt them, but we figured it was better to check all of the boxes and make sure everybody's kind of aware of it.
Yeah, because the more stuff we have in advance, the easier it is trying to figure it out at the last minute.
Exactly. And we'll do, once policy and planning kind of goes through it, we'll see how much time it's going to take to do all of this other stuff. I could do a quick summation of what the written standards are and why we need them prior to a vote, if it would be helpful, and just sort of, here are the types of things that got updated and changed. So people don't think it's like, oh man, this is a whole new 35-page document, which it's not. We've had one for what, 5-10 years, Lloyd?
Yeah, we've had them for the last half dozen years or so, but they've been more separate documents and a lot of repetition from one to the next. I'm going to need to leave and start a 11 o'clock meeting. So thanks, everybody. Appreciate all the good work and the support. We'll keep plugging away.
You got it. I'll join you momentarily, Lloyd.
Sure.
Thank you.
Are we near the end? Cause I actually have a very, quite a bit of things I need to do for 2 patients before my clinic day starts.
I think we're done whenever you all are.
Well, if there's nothing else that we need to discuss, then. Hi, Shay.
Hey, Shay,
Hi, everyone.
we're just wrapping up here.
Right.
But I can call you and fill you in a little bit if you'd like.
Thank you. I'm just leaving the doctor's appointment. Sorry for my tardiness.
No worries, no worries. Is there a good number you want me to give you a phone call on?
Yeah, just a regular one. 704.
Oh, shoot, hold on a second. Tim's dead. Hold on, let me get somewhere to jot this down. Okay, 704
964
964.
8778.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
You got it.
All right, well, then if there is nothing else that we need to take care of today, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right. Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.
Appreciate all
Bye.
the help and conversation. Thank you all.
Appreciate it.
All right, bye.
Bye.